Selena didn't come to the club looking for trouble. She came to scrub floors no one cared about and earn just enough to stop her landlord from knocking again. People like her moved in the shadows. Men like Jayden lived far above it. Yet somehow, on a night when the music had finally died and the lights were cooling down, their paths crossed. She found him slouched in a corner booth after closing, his shirt half open, his hair a mess, and an untouched bottle of something expensive sweating on the table. He didn't look like a man running an empire. He looked like someone carrying too much weight and trying to drink the world quiet. Selena tried to treat him like any other straggler she needed to usher out. But the way he looked at her, steady, fixed, almost startled, pulled her in before she could guard herself. One small exchange turned into something deeper. A question. A slow smile. A closeness she never let happen with anyone. By the time they tumbled into the storage room, all her rules had already been stepped over. In the morning, she reached for him and found only cold air. No name beyond Jayden. No number. No apology. Just the faint smell of alcohol and the sense she'd made a mistake she couldn't rewind. Weeks later, when her stomach started turning every morning, she stopped pretending it was stress. The test confirmed it. She was pregnant. And the man who vanished wasn't some lost rich boy, he was the one name whispered across the city, the man people crossed the street to avoid. Selena wasn't carrying just anyone's child. She was carrying the Mafia boss baby. Thank you all for following this story. If you're enjoying it, write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. Your support means everything and helps me continue bringing you these stories. Selena woke with a sour taste in her mouth and a slow spin in her head, the kind that felt like life was tilting at the wrong angle. She pushed herself out of bed anyway. Rent was already late by 2 days, and her landlord didn't believe in sympathy. Missing a shift wasn't an option. The morning commute felt longer than usual. Every bump on the bus rattled something in her chest. By the time she walked into the restaurant, the smell of frying oil turned her stomach hard. She grabbed the counter to steady herself before anyone noticed. Rough night? Marcy asked, tying her apron. Didn't sleep, Selena said. It was true, just not the whole truth. She pushed her way through the lunch rush, forcing smiles when customers were too loud and too close. With each trip to the kitchen, the nausea hit harder. Twice she had to duck into the restroom, hoping nobody was tracking how long she spent behind the door. By mid-afternoon, exhaustion settled into her bones. She counted her tips at the sink and frowned. Not enough to cover the rent, not even with the stash she had at home. She wasn't in crisis yet, but crisis was already knocking. The walk home was slow. Her stomach tightened again, and a simple, heavy thought sank in her chest. This wasn't just stress. She stopped at the pharmacy on the corner. The clerk gave her a neutral look as she picked up the pregnancy test, the cheap one with the plain label, because she didn't want questions from someone who didn't know her name. Back at the apartment, she tore open the box and stood frozen in her small bathroom, staring at the stick lying on the sink. Her breath went thin. The blue line appeared before she even finished bracing for it. She let out a shaky laugh, almost angry at how fast the answer came. She sat on the edge of the tub and pressed her palms to her eyes. The father was a man whose last name she never got. A stranger who hadn't felt like one. A man who touched her like he knew her soul, then walked out of her life with a quiet goodbye and no promise of anything more. Now she had a piece of him inside her. When the first shock settled, she grabbed her coat again and headed out. She didn't know what she planned to do, only that sitting alone in her apartment made the news too loud. Back at the restaurant, she found herself drifting toward the gossip corner, servers rolling silverware, leaning in close, swapping stories. She tried to keep her tone casual. You ever see that guy again? The one from last week, she asked Marcy. Which guy? Marcy made a face. You'll have to narrow it down. You're popular when you want to be. Selena tried to chuckle, tried to pretend her heart wasn't racing. The tall one. Dark eyes. Quiet. Quiet? Marcy snorted. Then he wasn't one of ours. Nobody had seen him. Nobody knew him. A couple of them swore they'd remember if he came back, but nothing rang a bell. The more she searched, the more it felt like she'd slept with a ghost. Late that night, after her shift ended, she lingered near the bar. Raoul, the bartender, wiped down glasses with a towel that had seen better days. He glanced at her like he already knew she wanted something. "You're asking around about that guy," he said. She nodded once. "You ever catch his name?" "No," Raoul hesitated, then added, "He wasn't alone the night he was here. He left with a group of men I've never seen. Suits. Not the kind that drink here." Her stomach tightened again, this time from unease instead of nausea. "What do you mean?" "They weren't regulars. Not even the rich kind trying to slum it. They looked like they were checking the exits. That sort of thing." Her pulse picked up. The bathroom tile swam in her mind. The blue line. The baby. The missing last name. She didn't say anything else. She thanked him and walked out before he could read too much on her face. The street outside was colder than she expected, the kind of cold that made the city feel made of metal. She headed toward the bus stop, pulling her jacket tight, thinking through options she didn't really have. Halfway down the block, she heard two men arguing softly by the alley. She wouldn't have paid attention if she hadn't heard a familiar name. "Jayden won't like that," one of them said. She froze. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the rest of the world fell away. The other man dropped his voice, but she caught enough. "He's not Jayden out here. You know that. He's the one running the whole outfit. Keep your mouth shut unless you want trouble." She kept walking, but her heartbeat drummed in her ears. Hidden boss. Biggest syndicate in the city. Men who weren't regulars. The details lined up too well. Suddenly the pieces of Jayden that once felt mysterious now felt dangerous. She didn't need to hear the rest. She spent the entire bus ride staring at her reflection in the dark window, thinking about the child she hadn't planned for. The father she couldn't approach. The truth she didn't want but now had to live with. When she stepped off at her stop, the night felt heavier. Maybe she should have felt fear, but what rose in her instead was something steadier. A quiet grit she didn't know she still had. If the man she had slept with belonged to that world, he wouldn't be in hers. Not safely. Not ever again. She walked up the stairs to her apartment and locked the door behind her. She put a hand on her stomach, still flat, still her own. Whatever happened next, she would handle it herself. The child would be hers to raise. No matter who the father was or what kind of shadow trailed behind his name. And for the first time that day, she breathed without her chest hurting. The night carried a strange calm, the kind that comes right before a life splits in two directions. Rent notices gathered on Selena's table like they were breeding. Every time she tried to sort them, another envelope slid under the door. The apartment lock didn't help her nerves. It stuck halfway, making her jiggle the key for close to a minute before it finally gave in. She kept telling herself she'd call a locksmith, but the price alone made her shut the thought down. Her nausea came in waves now. Some mornings it hit before her feet touched the floor. Other days it waited until she'd reached the bus stop. She tried mint gum, crackers, cold water, nothing stayed down long. Work didn't give her space to breathe either. Between the noise, the sweat, and the constant smell of alcohol, her stomach seemed to twist on purpose. Outside her building, a shape lingered again. Same spot as yesterday. Same stillness. Someone leaning against the streetlight, head down, hood up. It could have been anyone. This part of the city had enough drifters to form a parade. Still, something about the way the figure didn't move, even when she walked by, made her speed up. "You're tired. You're stressed. You're pregnant." She kept repeating it until her steps steadied. At work, she cleaned glasses behind the bar while Luis, one of the bartenders, sorted through crates. "You hear the latest?" he asked without looking up. "Unless it's about next week's schedule, no." He gave a short laugh. Ownership changed. Just like that. Manager didn't even get a warning. Some investors pushed in. Something about a power shift. Selena froze with a glass in her hand. "Since when?" "This morning. People upstairs aren't talking. But the security guys look tense." That's never a good sign. Tense was an understatement. During her break she watched them pacing in pairs, whispering into their radios. Someone had brought in two new bouncers, quiet, heavy guys who didn't blink much. She didn't ask questions. Everyone working there knew better than to pry when the air changed like that. Her shift dragged on. Customers were rowdier than usual, throwing cash around like they wanted to show off for the new faces guarding the corners. By the time she punched out, her legs felt like they'd been working double time. She stepped into the night, pulling her jacket tighter. The cold didn't bother her as much as the silence on the street. Usually someone was yelling, laughing, or stumbling around, but tonight the block was too quiet. She walked quickly, keeping to the main road. Halfway home, she heard footsteps behind her. A steady rhythm, not rushed, not hesitant, just close enough that she could tell it wasn't her own. Her breath shortened. She crossed the street. The footsteps crossed too. She turned left. They followed. The hairs on her arms prickled. She tightened her grip on her bag and kept moving. Her building came into view, a chipped three-story block with flickering lights, but she'd never been so relieved to see cracked paint in her life. She reached her door, fighting with the stubborn lock, the footsteps now somewhere behind her. Her hands shook. The key wouldn't catch. "Come on," she whispered. The footsteps slowed. She shoved the key in again. It caught this time, turning with a loud scrape. She pushed the door open, slipped inside, and slammed the deadbolt down just as someone stopped outside. The hallway stayed quiet. No knock. No voice. No footsteps retreating. She backed away from the door, heart thudding. Her whole body buzzed with a mix of fear and adrenaline. It took her a full minute to move again. She checked the windows twice, then a third time. Eventually she grabbed her phone and scrolled to the club manager's number. He wasn't the friendliest man, but he'd always been straight with her. If someone was following her because of the chaos at work, he'd know what to do. She called. The line rang once before a recording clicked on. "This number is no longer in service." She hung up, confused. Maybe he changed his phone. She tried the work line. A woman she didn't recognize answered. Her voice sounded rushed. "He's not coming back. Quit tonight. Didn't even finish paperwork. I'm not supposed to take calls." The woman hung up before Selena could reply. Selena lowered the phone, staring at the dark screen. Her nausea had faded, replaced by a steady throb behind her ribs. Everything around her felt unstable, the bills, the club, her apartment, her own body. And now someone had followed her home. She sat on the floor, pulled her knees up, and breathed slowly until the panic loosened. The silence of the apartment pressed in on her, but she'd gotten used to pushing through fear. She didn't have much choice. Eventually she stood, walked to the kettle, and set it on the stove. Hot water wouldn't solve anything, but it gave her hands something to do. She leaned against the counter, watching the flame flicker. The city kept shifting around her, tightening in ways she didn't understand yet. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity: she wasn't imagining any of this. Someone was watching her, and the timing wasn't random. She rubbed her stomach lightly, almost an instinct. "It's just us," she said quietly. "We'll figure it out." Outside, a car rolled slowly down the street, headlights sweeping across her curtains. She turned them closed and waited for the quiet to settle again. The world felt like it was closing in on her from too many angles, but she wasn't ready to fold. Not yet. The night didn't give her much sleep. Every sound felt like a warning. Pipes groaned. A door somewhere upstairs slammed. A car alarm chirped and died. By dawn her eyes burned, and the small hours had stitched a dull ache through her shoulders. She made tea she didn't drink and sat by the window, watching the street in case the shadow from last night returned. When it didn't, she almost convinced herself she'd imagined the whole thing. Stress had a way of twisting ordinary moments into threats. Then came the knock. 3 slow taps. Not loud. Almost polite. Her breath snagged. Nobody knocked at this hour. Not in this building. She stepped toward the door carefully, quiet enough that her slippers didn't make a sound. She looked through the peephole, and her stomach tightened so sharply she grabbed the wall. A man stood there. Tall. Shoulders squared like he'd spent years learning how to stand without giving anything away. Dark jacket, gloves, eyes fixed straight ahead. Calm in a way that didn't feel peaceful, more like a coiled spring waiting for the right pull. He wasn't the man from last night. This one held himself differently, too still, too focused. Selena backed up. She didn't even realize her hands were shaking until one brushed her stomach. "Selena," he said through the door, voice low but clear. "Open it. We need to talk." Her heartbeat thumped hard in her ears. She hadn't told him her name. She hadn't told anyone anything. The walls felt too close. "Who are you?" she asked, forcing the words out. "My name is Zion." It didn't help. She'd never heard that name in her life. "I'm not opening the door," she said. "You will." Not a threat. Not arrogant. Just stated like fact. She swallowed back a surge of nausea. "If you're from the club." "I'm not." "Then leave." Silence. Then, gently, "Your due date is mid-December. You're 8 weeks along." She froze. Her hand shot to the deadbolt, but she didn't move it. "How do you know that?" "You're not safe here." Her throat tightened. "Step away from my door." "I can't." His voice shifted, still firm, but with a weight she didn't understand. "Someone else knows about the baby. Someone who shouldn't." Air felt thin around her. Her mind tried to sprint in 5 directions at once. How he knew, what he wanted, who he worked for. "What do you want with me?" she asked. His answer came quiet and steady. "I'm here because of Jayden." Selena stiffened. She didn't want to hear that name again. Every time she thought of him, it stirred up the same mix of anger and confusion. "Jayden," she repeated. "What about him?" Zion waited a long second. "He didn't disappear because he wanted to." Her fingers tightened on the lock. "I'm not doing this. He was attacked the same night he met you." The room tilted a little. "Attacked?" "Ambushed," Zion said. "By one of his own." He paused, letting the words settle. "He survived." "Barely. He's been recovering off the grid since then." A cold shiver ran across Celine's back. She pictured Jayden's smile, the lazy confidence he carried, the warmth of his hands on her skin. The idea of him bleeding somewhere didn't match the version she knew. Why would someone attack him, she asked before she could stop herself. "Power," Zion said simply. "Control of the syndicate. He's the heir. Someone wanted him gone." Her breath hitched. "Then what does that have to do with me?" "You were seen with him that night," Zion replied. "Before the betrayal. The traitor knows he slept with someone. Now that same traitor knows you're pregnant." Selena's knees weakened. She pressed her palm to the counter to keep standing. "That makes you a loose end," Zion said. "And loose ends in our world don't live long." The tea kettle sat cold on the stove, but her mouth felt dry. She moved back to the door, slow and unsure, keeping one hand on the wall. "How do I know you're not lying?" she said. "If I wanted to hurt you," he answered, "you wouldn't still be standing behind that door." It wasn't comforting. It was too honest to be comforting. She looked through the peephole again. Zion hadn't moved. Not an inch. The kind of stillness that only came from training, discipline, or a lifetime of danger. Her chest tightened. "What do you want me to do?" "You need to come with me," he said. "Now." "No. You don't have time to think about this." I said no. He finally lifted his gaze to the door, like he could see right through it. "Selena, they will kill you. And they will kill the baby." Her breath hitched. "I know you're scared," he said. "You should be. But staying here means dying here." She backed away again, hands trembling. The apartment suddenly felt like a cardboard box, thin walls, thin locks, thin protection. But going with him felt like stepping into something vast and dangerous. "You said Jayden's alive," she whispered. "If that's true, why isn't he here?" "Because he can't walk yet without help," Zion said. "He's breathing, but that's about the limit." Her heart twisted in a way she didn't want it to. "Not after everything." "You're lying," she said weakly. "I wish I were." The hallway outside creaked. Heavy footsteps. 2 different sets. Zion glanced toward the sound. For the first time his voice tightened. "They found you faster than I expected." Selena's pulse spiked. Zion leaned closer to the door. Open it. Right now. Fear clawed up her throat. She didn't know him. She didn't trust him. But the footsteps were closing in, and something deep in her body, some instinct older than logic, pushed her forward. She unlocked the door. Zion stepped inside in one smooth move, shut it, and slid a metal bar into place from his jacket. Reinforcement. Improvised, but solid. He looked at her fully now, eyes sharp but steady. You're coming with me. I'll explain the rest on the way. Selena's legs trembled. She grabbed her coat without knowing why, stomach twisting with fear, doubt, and something that almost felt like resignation. Her life had already been shifting in quiet, slow ways. This was the moment it cracked open entirely. The men outside reached her door. Zion gave her a small nod. Stay behind me. And just like that, her choices vanished. The danger outside pressed in, and the path forward narrowed to one impossible direction. The rest of her story waited past that door, whether she wanted it or not. The world outside the apartment blurred into streetlights and dark shapes as Zion pushed her into the black SUV. No introductions, no explanations, just orders and the heavy feeling that this was a point of no return. The car sped through back roads she didn't recognize. The city thinned out. Buildings shrank into warehouses, then warehouses into empty fields. By the time the tires rolled onto gravel, her nerves were stretched so tight she could barely breathe. Zion parked beside a small, weather-beaten cabin tucked between tall pines. Not abandoned, but it felt removed from everything. The kind of place neighbors didn't exist and cries for help blended into the wind. This is it, he said as he opened her door. Selena didn't move right away. She stared at the cabin's porch light flickering like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive. Her arms wrapped instinctively around her stomach. Who's inside? She asked. Zion didn't answer. He guided her forward. The wood steps creaked under her shoes. The door opened before they reached it. Jayden stood there. Alive. Breathing. But the man she saw wasn't the same one from that night. His cheek held a thin scar that hadn't been there before. His jaw looked sharper, like he'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. His shoulders sagged with exhaustion he tried to hide, and his eyes, those were different too. Not warm. Not playful. Hard. Watchful. Like he'd learned to expect pain before anything else. His hand stayed on the doorframe as if even standing straight took effort. Selena's breath caught somewhere between relief and anger. Zion spoke first. She's here. Jayden's eyes scanned her face. Not a greeting. Not even a nod. Just searching, like he was trying to decide if she was real. Selena stepped inside, but only because Zion's hand lightly pressed her back. The door shut behind them. Silence settled. Jayden didn't break it. He just kept looking at her. The weight of it crawled under her skin. Finally she spoke. You're alive. His jaw tightened. Barely. You could have told me. Her voice trembled, and that annoyed her more than anything. I thought. She stopped. Her words felt stupid suddenly. Vulnerable. I thought you disappeared. I didn't disappear, he said, tone flat. I almost died. That's not an explanation. It's the only one I have. She crossed her arms. People don't get attacked and vanish unless they're involved in something dark. And now you're telling me whoever tried to kill you knows about me? Jayden's face hardened. You were seen with me that night. It put a target on you. That's not what I asked. Zion moved to the far wall, giving them space but not really. He was listening. He always was. Jayden didn't flinch at her anger. If I'd had a way to contact you, I would've. I wasn't conscious for days. When I woke up, I wasn't allowed near the city. The traitor has ears everywhere. Coming to you would have meant dragging those ears right to your door. Selena didn't know whether to believe him. She remembered his laugh. His charm. The way he held her like he had all the time in the world. She remembered how easily people lied when it suited them. I don't know what's true and what's not, she said. Jayden looked at her like he wanted to snap back but didn't have the strength. I didn't leave you. Her chest twisted with something she didn't want to think about. Anger. Fear. Maybe a tiny bit of grief. Jayden shifted his weight, and that's when his eyes dropped, slowly, like gravity dragged them, to her stomach. She froze. His gaze sharpened. A cold, assessing flicker. Not soft. Not tender. Calculating. Whatever warmth he'd shown the night they met was gone now. He studied her as if she were a piece of information he needed to decode. How far along? He asked quietly. She didn't answer. His jaw flexed. Is it mine? The room seemed to shrink. Selena's pulse spiked, heat crawling up her neck. She lifted her chin. That's not your business. His eyes darkened. It is if the child belongs to me. That assumes I owe you anything. Jayden stepped closer, slower than he once would have, but with an intensity that made her step back anyway. I didn't leave you, he said again, lower. Don't punish me for surviving. That's not what I'm doing. Then answer the question. No. Just that. One syllable. Jayden exhaled sharply, more frustration than breath. He looked away, pressing his fingers to his temple like the conversation cost him more strength than he had. Zion finally cut in. It's his, he said without hesitation. Selena whipped her glare toward him. You don't get to decide that. I'm not deciding, Zion said. I'm telling you why you're both in danger. Jayden's attention snapped to him. What do you know? Zion didn't bother with build-up. The man who ordered your hit, he's not settling for power anymore. He wants advantage. Leverage. Jayden straightened despite the pain etched in his movements. Zion continued, eyes shifting to Selena. Your child, the boss unborn heir, is the strongest leverage he could get. Selena's heartbeat stumbled. The traitor intends to use her, Zion said plainly. Either to control you, he looked at Jayden, or to force your hand. If he can't reach you, he'll take her. And if he can't take her? Selena swallowed hard. Then what? Zion eyed her belly with grim certainty. He'll erase the threat. The room felt colder. Selena stepped back instinctively, hand covering her stomach. Jayden didn't blink. Didn't breathe. He just stared at Zion with a stillness that made the air sharpen. When did he find out? Jayden asked. 2 days ago. And you're sure he intends to move on her? He already tried, Zion said. Outside her building. A quiet outrage flared through Jayden's expression, hot, buried, deadly. His fingers curled into fists, widening at the knuckles. Selena didn't miss the shift. For the first time since she walked through the door, Jayden didn't look tired. He looked like a man remembering exactly who he was. And she wasn't sure if that made her safer, or pulled her deeper into something she couldn't survive. Jayden's voice came low, steady, dangerous. She stays here. Nobody touches her. Nobody gets near her. His eyes flicked to her belly again, hardening. Especially not him. Selena felt the walls closing in, the safe house suddenly anything but safe. The truth was out now. Someone wanted her dead. Someone wanted her baby, Jayden's baby, dead. And she was trapped in the one place she'd sworn she'd never return to. Jayden's world. The cabin felt too still after Zion's warning. Not quiet, still. Like the air was holding its breath. Jayden paced once, unsteady but keyed up, the way someone moved when adrenaline forced their body past its limits. Selena stayed near the wall, fingers cold, stomach tight. Zion watched the windows like he expected them to blink wrong. No one talked. The silence sat heavy, stretching thin until even the floorboard seemed tense. Then it broke. A crunch outside, boots on gravel, too many to be chance. Zion's head snapped toward the front window. They're here. Jayden's reaction was instant. Selena, stay behind Zion. Don't move unless he tells you. She didn't argue. Her legs wouldn't have carried her even if she tried. The next sound was a single click. Metal. Prepared. Then the world exploded. The front window shattered inward with a force that blasted glass across the room. Gunfire lit the night, sharp and blinding, slicing through the wooden walls like they were paper. The safehouse shook under the assault. Selena ducked, covering her stomach as Jayden grabbed her arm and yanked her down behind the overturned couch. Jayden moved fast, too fast for someone who could barely stand hours ago. He flipped the table on its side for cover and fired back through the broken window. The muzzle flash lit his face in quick, violent bursts. Kitchen! Jayden shouted over the gunfire. Another round hit the wall inches from Selena's head. Wood splintered. Dust filled the air. Jayden didn't turn. Get her out. What about you? Selena yelled, her voice cracking. I'll be right behind you, he said. It was a lie. She heard it in the tightness of his tone. Jayden didn't wait for debate. He hauled her toward the kitchen, keeping her low. Bullets ripped through the cabinets, glass bursting like fireworks. A pan clattered off the counter and spun across the floor. Selena's ears rang. Every heartbeat felt like a punch to her ribs. Another window shattered, this time the kitchen one. A figure climbed halfway in. Jayden didn't blink. He fired once. The intruder dropped back outside with a thud. Hurry, he said, already pushing her toward the back exit. But Selena looked over her shoulder. Jayden was holding the front line alone. 3 men forced their way through the broken doorway. Jayden moved between them and the hallway, firing with brutal precision. But he wasn't at full strength. It showed in the slight drag of his arm, the momentary misstep when his leg buckled. A shot cracked. Jayden jerked, hand flying to his shoulder as blood soaked through his shirt. Selena gasped. Jayden. He didn't look at her. Didn't have the luxury. He shoved his shoulder against the wall to steady himself and fired again. Jayden pulled her harder. Selena, now. She stumbled into the cold night air as the door burst open behind them. Jayden pushed her toward the SUV parked under the trees. Gravel slid under her shoes as she ran the short distance, breath coming in sharp bursts. Another gunshot echoed inside the cabin. Her stomach twisted, nausea and panic colliding. She turned, needing to see. Jayden was still standing. Barely. His shirt was soaked, his face pale, but he held the line like he'd rather die than let anyone reach the back door. Their eyes met across the chaos for a split second. His expression wasn't gentle, wasn't desperate. It was fierce, like he was anchoring himself on the single fact that she needed to live. Get her out of here, he shouted towards Jayden. Jayden shoved her into the SUV's back seat. Seatbelt, he ordered. Her hands fumbled. The belt clicked just as Jayden slammed the driver's door. Gunfire punched through the night again. Jayden staggered, dropping behind the kitchen counter for cover. More men charged into the cabin after him. Jayden, we can't leave him. Selena yelled. We have to, he said, shoving the SUV into gear. We can't, she shouted again, voice breaking, hands clawing at the seat in front of her. Jayden didn't look back. He knew this was the plan. The SUV lunged forward. The gravel sprayed. The cabin shrank behind them as the trees swallowed the road. But Selena didn't look away. Through the back window she saw Jayden's silhouette at the kitchen doorway, slumped but defiant, firing one last shot before the shadows swallowed him. Her chest tightened painfully. Fury flared in her throat. Not at him, at the situation that dragged her life into this nightmare. At the fact that the father of her child stood bleeding because of a world she never asked to be part of. At the fear choking her, settling deep as a bruise. The SUV bounced onto the paved road, speeding into the dark. Selena pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the baby shift faintly inside her. She closed her eyes, jaw clenched. She wasn't fragile. She wasn't helpless. But tonight had nearly taken everything from her. Jayden drove fast, eyes locked on the road. We'll find another place, he said, more to the air than to her. Somewhere safer. Selena didn't answer. Her mind stayed in the cabin. With Jayden. With blood on the floor and gunfire echoing in the walls. With a man fighting for a child she hadn't even admitted was his. The night swallowed their escape route as the SUV sped toward whatever came next. Selena didn't sleep on the ride over. She kept her eyes fixed on the blur of streetlights, one hand clenched around her seatbelt as if the night might yank her straight out of the car. Jayden stayed quiet beside her. His breathing had that ragged edge again, the kind that told her his wound was pulling at him. But he didn't make a sound about it. Zion drove like the road owed him a favor. No music. No chatter. Only the soft hum of the engine filling the space between them. The new apartment sat at the top floor of an older building. Nothing fancy, but the place had heavy doors and reinforced windows. Selena stepped inside first, scanning the corners out of habit. She didn't know when she'd started doing that. Maybe the night gunfire came too close. Jayden walked in behind her and leaned against the wall. The color in his face had drained again. He tried to straighten up, but the attempt ended in a sharp breath that gave him away. "Sit down," Selena said, already moving for the first aid box Zion tossed onto the table. "I'm fine." "That's a lie." "Sit." Jayden held her eyes for a moment. Then he lowered himself onto the couch like a stubborn man trying not to look defeated. She knelt beside him, careful, steady. The moment her fingers brushed the warm skin around the wound, he tensed. Not from pain. Something else. Something that made the air feel too close. "You keep bleeding like you're trying to prove a point," she muttered, cleaning the cut. "Didn't plan on getting shot today." "You never plan anything," she said before thinking. His gaze flicked over her face. Quiet. Heavy. The kind of look that didn't feel safe because it felt too honest. "I don't take women home," he said. "Ever." She paused. "And what does that have to do with this?" "This," he said, voice low, "is you stitching me up in a safe house while I keep trying not to reach for you. I don't do close. I don't let anyone stand where you're standing." Selena taped a bandage across his skin, keeping her hand steady even though her chest tightened in a way she didn't ask for. "You think that's supposed to mean something? It means you weren't some mistake I picked up and forgot the next morning." He swallowed hard. "You were the one mistake I never meant to forget." Her jaw tightened. "That's not comfort, Jayden. That's pressure. And I'm not carrying that." He leaned back, breathing out. "Didn't expect you to." She stood before her words sharpened further. "Listen. My child isn't leverage. I'm not your property. You don't get to talk like I belong to you because you regret how things ended." His eyes flicked up, steady. "You don't belong to me. I know that. Then don't make this complicated." "I'm not trying to win you," he said. "I'm trying to keep you alive. That's it." The room felt slightly less tight after that. Only slightly. Zion came in, dropping into a chair like he'd aged 10 years in an hour. His phone buzzed non-stop, and every time he checked it, his face went darker. "Tell me something useful," Jayden said. "You're not going to like it." "I already don't." Zion rubbed the bridge of his nose. "The traitor isn't hiding anymore. He's building something. Fast. Men, weapons, access points. He's calling in favors you burned years ago. Looks like he wants the whole crown." Jayden's jaw flexed. He always wanted it. "Yeah, but now he's acting like he already has it. He's gathering soldiers. He's stocking up. He's pushing messages out. People are listening." Selena crossed her arms. "You said traitor. Who exactly are we talking about?" Zion shot a quick glance toward Jayden, checking if he should speak freely. Jayden nodded once. "His name's not worth saying," Zion replied. "But he used to walk beside Jayden. Ate with him. Trained under him. Smiled a little too easily. The type who waits for your back to turn before he grows teeth." Jayden said nothing at first. He looked at the wall like the memory of that betrayal was etched there. "When I stepped down for a while," he said, voice low, he tried to fill the vacuum. "People listened, but not enough. Now he's trying again, with more confidence." Selena watched him, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers curled like he was holding something sharp in his palm. Zion added, "He's preparing to make a move. Not whispers. Not small hits. Something bigger." Jayden pushed himself up slowly, pain tightening across his face but not stopping him. "Then we stay ahead. We don't wait for him to take a shot." Zion raised an eyebrow. "You're barely stitched together and you're talking like you're sprinting out the door." "I'm not dead." That's enough. Selena stepped in front of him before he got further. You can't protect anyone if you fall over tomorrow. Sit down. He smirked. You giving orders now? If they keep you alive, yes. Jayden chuckled softly. You found your match, boss. Jayden ignored him. His eyes stayed on Selena in a way that made her throat warm, but she didn't let it show. She said, you promised protection. And I'll hold you to it. But don't twist that into something romantic. I won't, he replied. I'm keeping things clear. For the first time since the night exploded around them, she believed him. Jayden stood, gathering his notes and maps. We rest for a few hours. Then we start moving pieces. He's faster than we expected. Selena sat on the far end of the room, watching both men settle into a silence that felt heavy enough to bend the floorboards. Jayden leaned back, eyes half closed, shoulders loosening as the pain meds finally kicked in. He looked worn down but not broken. Not by a long shot. She didn't trust him. Not fully. But she trusted his instinct to protect what mattered. And right now, she and her child fell under that category whether she liked it or not. The night pressed against the windows as if waiting for something. In the quiet, one truth settled across all of them. Whatever was coming next would not wait long. Jayden disappeared down the hall, leaving the apartment wrapped in the kind of quiet that didn't sit still. Selena stayed where she was, arms crossed tight against her chest, watching Jayden breathe through whatever pain the night had stamped into him. He opened his eyes after a minute. You're staring. You disappeared, she said, the words pushing out sharper than she meant. 4 months. No call. No message. Nothing. And now I'm sitting in some safe house with you bleeding on furniture and talking about enemies like it's normal. Jayden didn't defend himself. He let her anger sit there. Say something, she said. He dragged a hand over his face. Someone inside put a hit on me. She blinked. Inside? Not street level. Not rivals. Someone close. He looked past her, like he expected the betrayal to walk through the door. It wasn't a warning shot. They wanted me gone so they could walk right into my seat. And you didn't tell me because I didn't want you caught in it. His voice carried exhaustion, not excuses. After the attempt, I pulled back. Went underground. Tried to figure out who moved against me without putting a target on you. Jayden, I thought you just chose to walk away. He let out a sound between a breath and a laugh. I was falling apart long before the bullet. Leadership, territory politics, people pulling at me from every side. I stopped sleeping. Stopped eating right. Started making stupid moves. Pressure does strange things to a man when he refuses to admit he's drowning. Selena eased down into the chair across from him. So you shut down. I thought distance would steady things. He shook his head. Instead, everything cracked. She ran her thumb along the edge of her sleeve, the way she did when she didn't know how to hold her emotions. You weren't the only one cracking. Jayden looked at her for the first time with full attention. My rent was overdue for 2 months, she said. I was stretching groceries until they didn't stretch anymore. I kept thinking about raising a child alone. No family. No support. No idea if I could even afford diapers by the time the baby came. The silence shifted. It wasn't heavy now. Just real. You shouldn't have faced that alone, he said quietly. Well, I did. She swallowed. Because the person who should have been in the picture vanished. And I had to pretend I wasn't terrified every second. Jayden leaned forward but winced as the pull of stitches hit him. He didn't hide the reaction. I didn't know it had gotten that bad for you. You didn't ask, she said. That's the truth. His shoulders slumped slightly, the kind of small fall that meant the point landed. They sat like that for a bit, the night buzzing through the walls. No shouting. No accusations. Just 2 people trying not to get swept under by everything they didn't say before. Jayden's gaze drifted to her belly. Not with ownership. Not even curiosity. Something more fragile. Can I? He asked. She hesitated but nodded. He reached out slowly, as if her skin was something that might disappear if he moved too fast. His hand rested lightly over the curve. Warm. Careful. Unsure. For a man who commanded rooms, he looked like he was touching something he thought he didn't deserve to hold. Selena watched his face shift, surprise, fear, awe, all tangled in a way he couldn't hide. I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted. But I want to try. Her chest tightened. Not painful. Just full. The apartment door slammed open. Zion stumbled in, breath sharp, phone gripped tight. We've got a problem. Jayden jerked upright, hand dropping from her stomach. What now? He asked. Zion held up the phone. Selena's location leaked again. Not rumor. Not guesswork. Someone pushed her address into a chat group that's tied to the traitor's people. Selena felt the floor tilt under her. Jayden stood too fast and winced but didn't stop moving. How long ago? 20 minutes. They're already talking about sending someone to retrieve the asset. That's their wording. Jayden's eyes went cold. She's not an asset. She's under my protection. Yeah, Zion said, but they don't care. Selena let out a slow breath, forcing her mind to stay steady. So that means someone knows where I was staying before tonight. Zion nodded. And they didn't just find it by chance. Jayden turned toward her, jaw tight. We move now. She stood, heart pushing against her ribs, but her voice stayed level. Move where? A safer place. Deeper protection. Somewhere no one touches unless they're looking to die. Zion was already packing equipment, shoving files and weapons into bags. Selena watched them, her pulse loud in her ears. That quiet moment she had with Jayden, the one where something finally softened between them, was swallowed whole. But she felt something new settle inside her. Not trust. Not yet. But the sense that whatever storm was coming, Jayden wasn't planning to run from it this time. He met her eyes. They're not getting near you. Not again. There was no heat in his tone. No drama. Just a simple truth he meant to stand on. The night outside shifted, loud and restless, waiting for their next move. And the three of them didn't waste a second. The ride to the new safe location was quiet, thick with thoughts none of them were ready to say out loud. When they finally stopped, it wasn't another apartment or a rented room. It was a fortified townhouse tucked behind two gated checkpoints, the kind of place only people with serious pull knew existed. Jayden checked every corner before letting Selena inside. Zion swept the lower floor. The air hummed with tension, a low current running through all three of them. Jayden turned to Zion. Full lockdown. No one in. No one out without my say. Selena stepped past him, unzipping her coat as she went. You can't cage me. He blinked at her. It's not a cage. It's protection. It's both, she said, looking him dead in the eye. And I'm not living like this forever. Jayden let out a slow breath, the kind people give when they're trying to stay calm. Selena, they want leverage. They want you. That's not negotiable. I get that, she said. But hiding won't fix anything. If you really want to protect me and the baby, then finish the war you started. The words hit him harder than a punch. His jaw tightened, and for a moment he didn't say anything. Zion whistled under his breath from across the room. She's got a point. Jayden ignored him. His focus stayed locked on her, dark eyes steady. I didn't start the war. They did. Fine, she said. Then end it. He stepped closer. You want me to take on a traitor who's already tried to kill me? A man with soldiers and money and access. Yes, she said. Because he's not stopping until he gets what he wants. And what he wants is me and this child. Jayden looked away, hand running through his hair in a rough sweep. You're asking me to walk straight into a fight that could get everything. Everything is already gutted, she said. Your people are split. Your territories are shaky. Someone inside your circle thinks you're weak enough to replace. This doesn't go away by keeping me hidden in houses with reinforced walls. He turned back, and something shifted in his expression. Not anger. Not fear. Something heavier. You're not my soldier, he said quietly. No, she said. I'm the mother of your child. And I'm done being treated like a fragile problem you can shove into a corner until it's convenient. The room went silent. Even Zion paused mid-step. Jayden's shoulders dropped slightly, the tension giving way to something closer to surrender. You're right, he murmured. I don't get to make every call for you. Selena steadied herself, pressing her hand against the small of her back where the tension pooled. I'll stay protected. I'll listen to your people when danger hits. But I'm not being locked away like some package you stash in a vault. He nodded once. A slow, reluctant acceptance. All right. You'll be part of the decisions from now on. His voice was low. Honest. Even if it scares the hell out of me. Zion set a first aid kit on the counter and glanced between them. You know this isn't normal behavior for him. Jayden shot him a warning look, but Zion kept talking. You're changing, boss. Because of her, he said. Whether you want to admit it or not. Jayden didn't respond. He didn't push back. That alone was an answer. Selena watched him, the sharp lines of his face softened by exhaustion. Or maybe by her presence. She wasn't sure which scared her more. Zion, Jayden said, voice low. Get the files. All of them. Every ledger, every message, every name tied to the traitor. Zion nodded and went upstairs, leaving the two of them alone again. Jayden pressed his palms on the table, leaning over it as if the weight of the entire city sat on his shoulders. This ends soon, he said. I'll take back control. Clean house. And whoever touched you, they'll answer for it. There was no arrogance in his tone. Just certainty. A quiet vow he intended to keep, even if it broke him. Selena felt a knot form in her chest, a twist of fear, anger, and something close to grief. She wasn't just afraid he'd get killed in the fight ahead. She was afraid of what it meant if he survived. If he won. If he walked out of the war still holding the empire that had already torn him apart once. Because then he'd still be the man she met in that club, dangerous, powerful, the kind of force people whispered about behind closed doors. And she'd still be tied to him, not just by a night they barely understood, but by a child that linked her to his world forever. Jayden straightened and looked at her. Selena. His voice pulled her back from the edge of those thoughts. She forced herself to steady. She exhaled. Be smart. Don't walk into something you can't walk out of. He nodded. I don't plan on dying. That's not what I'm afraid of, she said, barely above a whisper. Jayden didn't ask what she meant. Maybe he already knew. Zion called from upstairs, boss. You're going to want to see this. Jayden moved toward the stairs, pausing long enough to look at Selena one last time. We start tonight, he said. And she stood in the middle of the fortified room, hand resting on her stomach, fighting the truth settling deep inside her. If he survived, the real battle wouldn't be the traitor. It would be everything that tied them together now.